Sexual integrity, that is the topic for today. You've probably heard what the word sexual is. What does integrity mean? If someone has integrity, how would you define that person? Maybe honest? Maybe true to their values? There's also the word integrity meaning entirely whole and undiminished. So if a submarine has compromised its integrity, it's no longer whole and it could sink. So there's a bit of a play on words here. In sexual integrity, we're talking about the wholeness of a person, because you know your sexuality involves more than just your body, because you are more than just a body. It would be nice if we could compartmentalize our spirit, our soul, our body, and our emotions, and have things in separate categories. But you know, what we do with our bodies affects our emotions, affects our spirits. So you're going to learn about a little deeper things than general sex ed today, sexual integrity. What does God say about sex? You know, the Bible's full of scriptures relating to sex. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they were both naked, and they were not ashamed. That's from Genesis. God's designed sex not to be shameful, not to be dirty. Within the right context, within the right boundary, sex is good. It's beautiful. It's blessing. It's awesome. Take it out of that context of covenant love, and people get hurt. This is from Proverbs. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer, may her breasts satisfy you always. May you ever be captivated by her love. This is in the Bible. And I think it's quite amusing, actually, to read Song of Solomon or Song of Songs. And it says, your breasts are like clusters of fruit, and I will climb that tree and take hold of its fruit. This is in the Bible. I want you to understand God is not against sex. Why sex? What is the big deal? Why did God make it? Here we have some thoughts here. There's bonding, creating new life, fun, part of being human, love. God made it. It's good. You know that there are hormones released in the brain when people are intimate that create bonding, that create a connection there. God's designed it that way. I'll be talking about that. Oxytocin, vasopressin, dopamine. It's amazing, God's design. You'll learn all about that. Our society is obsessed with sex. Have you noticed? They use sex to sell you anything. Look at these ads. This is orange juice, saying squeezed in Brazil. This is an ad for a Nikon camera comparing pixel sizes, the larger capacity versus the smaller capacity. We are bombarded with images of sexuality all the time, and photoshopped images. They're not even real. My friend gave me a stack of magazines that she'd been carrying around for years, and they were about 12 years old, and I couldn't believe the difference, because people look like people, and I didn't notice until looking back that everything we see today is photoshopped. Everything has a filter on it, like that Instagram perfection. There's this completely unattainable reality that's not reality, that's given to everyone who looks at it. So we see on the screen here, 35% of girls aged 6 to 12 have been on at least one diet. 50% to 70% of normal weight girls think they're overweight. We have crazy perceptions of reality from these distorted images. I love that supermodel Cindy Crawford said, I wish I looked like Cindy Crawford. She knows she doesn't wake up looking like that. You too could look fabulous if you had a great photographer, great lighting, makeup artist, great wardrobe, hair and makeup done, and then on top of that you were photoshopped. You could look amazing too. We're given this illusion, and no one can live up to it. It's not reality. So I want you to know you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I don't want you comparing yourself to these images that aren't reality, even for the girls in those images. So, you know, they use sex to sell everything because they know you will look at an ad longer. It gets your attention if there's something stimulating to look at, of course. So we're going to look at media influences here. 75% of primetime shows contain sexual content. That's 3/4. But only 11% discuss any risk. we're not seeing the full picture. How many shows do you see where they discuss their STDs and STIs? Nope. One in 5 teens have sent nude or semi-nude photographs, pictures electronically via text or email. That's called sexting. 1 in 5. What would possess a 15-year-old girl to send a naked photograph of herself to her boyfriend? Why would she do that? I've heard girls say she wants to be loved, she wants to be accepted, she wants to be noticed. All these reasons, but she doesn't realize once she's got that image out there, what could happen? Yeah, you know, she can't get that image back. And if the girl is underage in the picture, that is child pornography and is illegal to have or to forward to a friend. So I encourage you, do not send a naked picture of yourself. The internet doesn't forget. And you have these things that can come back to haunt you later in life. 1 in 5 teens. That's shocking to me. 1 in 5. On average, the first exposure to pornography among young men, on average, is 8 to 9. A lot of boys, it's 12 when it happens, but the average is younger because young children stumble across pornography and they don't even have to be looking for it. Porn producers target children. You can type in Dora the Explorer and get porn. You can be on a kid's website with fun games, and on the side there will be things to click on. And curious kids can click on things and leads to stuff they really shouldn't be seeing at such tender ages. Is pornography damaging? Is there anything wrong with looking at pornography? I think some of you probably know the answer to that. Pornography is addictive. It's progressive. When you look at pornography, there is dopamine released in your brain. Do you guys know what dopamine is? That's that hormone that releases anytime you do something that feels good. So even having a donut for some people, dopamine. Even thinking about eating a donut can release dopamine. It's the feel-good hormone. So people want to feel good, and that's the addictive component of pornography. But the scary thing is it is progressive because lust is never satisfied. So when people start looking at images, they get desensitized to that type of image and then want more and want more and want more. And even the porn producers themselves, some years back, had a conference and they were shocked at what the demand was. People were wanting more and more violent, more kinky, more strange things because they were desensitized to normal and didn't get the same buzz. My friend used to play rugby for Australia, and one of his teammates confided in him that he can't make love to his wife without something else to look at, some other visual stimulation, because his brain was so messed up from looking at porn for years that his wife wasn't enough. How degraded would she feel? So sad. Pornography steals people's awesome sex life potential because of this addiction. And what happens in young people, their brains are still forming. You know, your brain is still forming until you're 25. You've probably heard that before. And the last part of your brain to develop is your prefrontal cortex on your frontal lobe there. And that's the part of the brain that thinks through consequence, that thinks through what's going to happen if I do this, what could go wrong. That part's firmly there by 25, and that's why your car insurance is suddenly cheaper when you're 25, because you know if you're going to speed around that corner, you're going to wipe out. Until that age, people tend to be a little more impulse-driven, particularly for the young men, a little more impulse-driven, driven by emotion, not thinking through consequence. And that's a stereotype. It's a pattern. Not all guys fall into that category. Not all girls fall into the wisdom and thinking ahead category either, but that's a general trend. 1 in 3 people viewing a pornographic website are female. So some people think porn is just a guy's problem. It's not an issue for women. That's not true. And I remember being told guys are visual and girls are not. And I went, oh, okay, I think like a guy. Anyone else relate? Because guys are visual and girls are visual, but in different ways. See, for men, It's narrow. What they find arousing is narrow. For women, it is broader. So they've done studies using MRIs and measuring arousal and things. And girls can be pretty much 75% of females can be aroused by looking at pretty much anything sexual, even primates mating. Anything sexual. The guys normally laugh at that because they cannot imagine that being arousing. But so girls are visual, it just is a little different to the guys. 1/3 viewing pornography are female. And if we get our sex education looking at pornography where it's often violent, more than regular, is usually more violent, more strange, more aggressive. That is not how women want to be treated. That is not how men want to be treated. And people get a very distorted view of sexuality, so far removed from the love and tenderness and beauty that God designed in the first place. So I encourage you, if you're having troubles, getting away from pornography, get some help. Get some filters on your computer, on your devices. Talk to someone about it, because shame exists in the dark, and what is done in the dark is exposed in the light. And some people who think they cannot get free, once they talk about it and tell people that they have a problem, they can start to heal. So I encourage you to steer away from it as much as you can. Here we have a slide showing the brain scans of multiple men and women combining to make averages. We see in the orange here where women have more activity than men in those areas, and in the blue we see where men have greater activity than the women in these areas. So it's interesting. The brains are typically different, but they're complementary. And where my husband has strengths and where I'm not awesome in a super stressful situation, he is amazing. That's when I'm like, I need my man. God has made us differently. Totally equal, but different. So I want you to understand, before MRI technology, they thought girls' brains and boys' brains were the same. And when they discovered there were biological differences, it was a revelation, a revelatory experience. What? They're actually different in the way they're hardwired. So in terms of sexuality, that can be very differently felt emotionally, can be very differently processed between the genders. And not all guys are the same and not all girls are the same. There are lots of crossover brains. I'm one of those. But you need to understand that if a girl is completely bonded with someone during sex, that doesn't necessarily mean the guy is feeling the same way. It could, but not necessarily. And some girls think if they just give their guy what he's after, then he will love them. But that doesn't often work out that way, unfortunately. I was speaking in a high school in Richmond, Vancouver, and I was saying, literally, I'm quoting here, I said, there are some guys who have no sexual integrity, some guys who will do anything to get into your pants, who will say, I love you. And this girl got up out of the class crying and left. And she came back in at the very end, and I've read her feedback form at the end, and she said, everything you said just happened to me and it completely freaked me out, so I had to leave. She goes, my boyfriend told me he loved me, I gave him my virginity, and 2 weeks later he dumped me and moved on to another girl. She was devastated and she was raw and hurting, and the pain was extraordinary. For her, sex was bonding and sex was an expression of love. For him it wasn't. Now, I don't want you to think that only girls get hurt, because I know lots of guys who are just better at hiding the pain, putting up that macho bravado, but they're hurting just as much as the girls. If sex means nothing, why is the suicide rate among teenage boys who've been sexually active 6 times higher than their virgin peers? And for teen girls, some studies say even higher than that. If sex is mere skin on skin, why the hurt? Because there is more to sex than mere skin on skin. Sex is as much spiritual mystery as physical fact. The two become one. And for girls, depression is one of the first signs. Because there is a cleaving, there is a bonding there. physically, emotionally. There's a connection. So I want to talk about the brain chemicals. Vasopressin. Have you heard of vasopressin? It's not as well researched as oxytocin, but vasopressin is the hormone released in the male brain during sex. Now, this hormone is the same hormone a man's brain is washed with when he holds his newborn baby for the first time and he falls in love. You know, there are some guys who never wanted to be a dad, and then they hold their baby and they fall in love. Something changes. That's beautiful. God's designed these hormones to bond. Now, I don't know if vasopressin levels are equal in all men, because some guys are lousy fathers, and some guys can go from partner to partner to partner sexually and not bond with women. So there is a difference there. But vasopressin exists in the male brain when he is intimate with the one he loves. Oxytocin, that's the female brain hormone. Oxytocin is the one a mother releases in large amounts when she gives birth to her baby and breastfeeds her baby. It's an I love you, it's a bonding, it's a warm fuzzies, it's this beautiful feeling. I remember when I first became a mother, it was like my heart was out of my chest and I would die for this baby in a heartbeat. It was the mama bear in me. You touch my baby, you hurt my baby, I kill you. And I'm not kidding. That was this fierce love. This oxytocin love was just so strong. And that's also released in the female brain in incredibly high amounts during intimacy. Before, not as strong, but intimacy is powerful. But you have to be careful who you let touch you, because in the female brain, oxytocin is also released during a 20-second hug. 20 seconds. If you let someone hug you and hold you for 20 seconds, feelings of love and trust can start to form with that person, even if they're not worthy of love and trust. You know, you've probably heard people say, why is she with that loser? Can't she see? Love is blind. Literally, love is blind. She is hijacked by oxytocin and she's not thinking rationally and she's not seeing how the rest of the world sees. So in marriage, it's beautiful. 20-second hug, feeling the love. It's great. It bonds two people together. So oxytocin is a really powerful gift. It bonds man to women, women to man, and to their children. It's wonderful. I love it. It's good. But just be aware of the power of it and who you let in your space, girls. And guys, don't use that to your advantage. I know that's good information, but don't go asking for 20-second hugs now. What is your biggest fear when you become sexually active? What are you afraid of? Are there any consequences? Teenagers are often afraid of this. But you know, pregnancy doesn't kill you. What are the options if someone finds themselves pregnant? It says here there are approximately 34,000 teen pregnancies each year in Canada. Option 1, parenting. This is a challenging but rewarding option, but there are things to consider. School, money, house, dreams, career, plans. Having a child puts everything else on hold because your priorities shift. But I have to say, as a mum of 3, being a mum is the most rewarding thing I've ever done with my life. And I'm so thankful that, you know, we had children in that security of being married, and it was just a blessing. I didn't have to worry about all these things. In the fullness of time, having children at the right time was a wonderful blessing. If you are having a child as a younger person without all that security, it wouldn't be easy, but I'm not saying don't do it, because being a mum, it literally has changed my life. And I remember reading The Female Brain. It literally changes the female brain. Even chemically. Forever on, after being a mother, the brain is different. Hardwired differently. I'm sure many of you want to be parents one day. I recommend it. Okay, adoption. This is another option. A lot of people don't know all the options within adoption. You can have a closed adoption where you don't see or know or hear anything, through to seeing each other regularly, so the child has their mummy and their tummy mummy, and being involved in their lives. But, you know, handing over the rights to parent, that's a big deal. Adoption is not without loss. Adoption is, I like to view it as not giving a child up, but giving the child more, because you're giving that child more than you could at that stage in life. So I think adoption is beautiful. It's life-giving. It's blessing some people who cannot have children and really, really want to be parents. We have half of teenage pregnancies ending in abortion in British Columbia. Half of them. And there are some potential physical risks, which you can read on the slide here. But what we see mostly at crisis pregnancy centres, where we have post-abortion grief counselling, is the emotional risks. You know, there can be depression or guilt, alcohol and drug-related abuse, abortion flashbacks, suicidal thoughts, even anniversary grief. And some people are fine for years. And later, they start to think, oh, my baby would be this age now. And then they see someone who would be the age of their child, and they're triggered. And so it's not an eraser. There are emotional consequences. And at one school, a fellow presenter was talking about abortion, and this student, she just got up in tears and left. She couldn't handle it because it just been her journey, and she was still processing, and it was painful. And all the girls, it was a girls-only school, and all the girls were teary, knowing what she'd been through. And I just had to say, is a moment of pleasure worth a lifetime of regret? It's not worth it. And I know if she could turn back time, she would have made different decisions. You know, once you're pregnant, your decisions are not easy. The best decisions come before having sex to start with. So I'm here to try and help you with your prefrontal lobe, thinking through consequence. Before you do become sexually active, are you ready to be a parent? Are you ready to give up a baby for adoption? Give your baby more for adoption? Are you ready to deal with the ramifications of your decisions? None of that is easy. We have a video here that I hope you enjoy.